have to take another leap of faith. That when you're engaged with my words, you're not engaged with me. So everything I need to say to you needs to be crystal clear. It needs to be pristine. It needs to be lucid, because your interaction with me is navigated through this book. And I think that's where sometimes when I've seen people who've had amazing stories, but then when they write their books aren't selling, or they're discouraged or disappointed. And one of the questions I will say, well, who did you write it for? Yes, it's about you. But you want people to read it. You want people to buy it. So you can't do it in a silo. Can't do it in a vacuum. You have to be mindful of the fact that there's a readership. How do you write being mindful of an audience? How do you write in a way where it's going to be compelling, it's going to be engaging, where people are literally going to turn the pages and make the recommendation? Have you read? Did you read? Oh, you have to read this. Because oftentimes, that's how books get a lot of traction, because people have referred them. What are you reading? Is it good? Right? So how do you get that kind of response? And one of the things I would say is be intentional. Be intentional, be deliberate during the writing process. Because once you've actually launched it, and then the feedback comes in that, it was only okay, or it wasn't well written, or it needed to be edited, to a certain extent, by then it's too late. So I think the more that you can kind of think about it front end, the better off you are.
That's good. That's good.
Are you able to get breakthroughs through the writing process?
Absolutely. I've seen clients who have come to me and they literally are like, I only have a paragraph, right? And I didn't mention any names. I've had quite a few clients who will come to me, have a paragraph. I've started this outline. I can only get to the first 3 chapters, right? And so part of it is, again, thinking in terms of, there's a term we use called scope and sequence. When you put a book together, you're not just randomly selecting chapters and putting them together. Okay. There's some sort of scope, right? There is some reason why chapter 1 is chapter 1 and not chapter 5, right? So there's either a sequential, chronological, logical spectrum that you're using to determine how your book is ordered. But there's also this thing called sequencing, right? So you're looking at not just what this book is about. So by the time someone enters into that last chapter, what should they take away from it? But what was the directions, or what were the directions that I gave them to get to that point? So literally what tends to happen is when either it's a virtual coaching session or it's an in-person session, or for my clients where they use our feedback and our editing services, it can simply be a question where, okay, what was your intention here? Okay. Or this is not clear. What did you expect or want of the reader? And then someone who's been writing for a long time, you're so engrossed with your words, typically you haven't stepped back and seen it from that vantage point. So having a reader come in to make a suggestion, or an editor come in and make a suggestion, sometimes that's where the breakthrough comes in. So it may not be in the actual writing process. It may be because someone else has raised a question that you haven't thought about. And then it's like, oh, I do need to go back and do that.
So, feel free, ladies, if you have questions of Dr. Tyra, to jump in and ask her a question.
Oh, I sure do. What do you mean by stamina? You mean physical stamina of writing, or you mean mental, emotional?
So I think in terms of stamina, I think when you write, you are using your intellectual stamina, creative stamina, and spiritual stamina. I think that you have to make a commitment to the entire process. And sometimes we get tired. Okay. Sometimes life will happen. Sometimes we will encounter roadblocks or detours. And so you have to stand on the notion that no matter what, I'm going to finish this book. I'm going to see this book to fruition. And so, again, if you have a very, very complicated, busy life, it goes back to a question that I think was posed earlier. Is this the season for you to write it in? It doesn't mean that the book won't get written, but is this the season? Because if writing becomes burdensome, if it becomes overwhelming, if it becomes something that you begrudge, then you're not going to write your best self into that work, because there's one more thing you have to do. One more thing. And so, again, thinking in terms of, what does my life look like? Can I set aside consecrated time to write? Can I sacrifice something else? Because right now this needs to be a privilege in my life. So all of that for me is embedded when we talk about stamina, because you have to be able to see it through completion.
I'm glad you asked that question. We are going to take a commercial break. We need to pay some bills, but you are tuned into Let's Go There with Cassandra, where we are talking about the power of sharing your story. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Have you ever experienced the stress of dealing with a loved one during a disability or seen the chaos after the death of someone who's died? Well, Norton Estate Planning and Elder Law Firm specializes in helping guide families through such traumatic events. They're committed to helping individuals create a personalized estate plan that meets their expectations. The firm is comprised of individuals that believe in education, maintenance, and collaboration. They believe that estate planning should focus on providing you with a plan that reflects who you are, maximizes your control during life, protects you and your wishes in the event of a disability, and provides the instructions for carrying out your legacy at your death. If you're in need of wills, trust, power of attorney, guardianship assistance, Medicaid services, or probate administration, contact their office today at 317-572-8696 or visit their website at www.estateplanners.org. Norton Estate Planning and Elder Law Firm is committed to protecting your dignity and securing your legacy.
All right, you are back to listening to Let's Go There with Cassandra, where we are talking about the power of sharing your story. We have some amazing women, my sister girls, who are here, sister friends, sharing about their story, and just from Dr. Tyra, who is giving us some all kind of life about tips on how to get this book started. So I'm going to roll into our next question of, for those who may be afraid, that fear factor, to start the writing process, what's two things, Dr. Tyra, you would encourage them to do?
Okay, thing one that sounds funny. Okay, so I would recommend that you think about the alternative. Flip it. If I don't write this book, then, okay? And for a lot of people, simply rephrasing that helps them to think in terms of the urgency or the importance surrounding telling their story. Because as I've said, and as you have bore witness to in our sessions, no one can tell your story the way that you can. So even though I may be close to you or connected to you or associated with you, only you can tell your story. And so if you're not telling it, then who's going to tell it for you? Mm-hmm. So that would be the first thing. Think about the alternative of not telling it. The second thing is to acknowledge and embrace fear. We think of fear sometimes as being our kryptonite, and it doesn't have to be. Fear sometimes is the motivator for success and greatness, because when you recognize that you can push through the fear and you can accomplish goals that initially you thought might have been impossible, that empowers you. So literally ask yourself, what is the fear factor here? Am I afraid of rejection? Am I afraid people aren't going to read it? Am I afraid of being vulnerable? Literally articulate and write out what the fear is. And then what you'll probably see is that some of this fear really isn't as daunting as you thought it was. And then you accept the fact that the task at hand is yours and trust the process.
That's awesome. So ladies who've started, I know, Tangi, you said you've started, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what are two things that you encourage somebody who may be afraid?
You either do or don't. Those are the two things to do. Do or don't. Do start the process, as the doctor said. Because you get it started doesn't mean the book has to be written right then. Mm-hmm. So either do or don't, and find out if it's don't for you. Do or don't.
Tia.
Just start writing. Just start writing. Whatever you like to do. I'm somewhat of an introvert. People always say, "No, you're not." I am. I like my quiet time. I like to be alone a lot of times. I like to find quiet places where I can think, and that's sometimes shutting everybody out and just having me, my thoughts, a pen, a pad. And if you are any type of sometimes you got to create that time if you're not that type of person. But it comes very natural to me to do that. I mean, go to a coffee shop and just start writing, and write like you're writing to a best friend, or, writing like you're writing to the problem or whatever you went through. So I would say just start, and like you said, push past the fear, because a lot of people don't start because the fear of what someone else would think, the perception of You know, what my family will say, you know, what will my friends say? Can I really tell it how it is? You know, when you're telling your stories, should I leave that detail out? Well, if you leave those details out, you're really not being transparent. So you might as well not write the book, right? So it's the fear of what others would think of you. And you have to lose that fear, you know, and just not care about what others think of you.
Okay.
I feel like once I voice that I'm going to do something, my friends are like, well, what's up? Like, you said this. So I have to be ready to say I'm going to do this because I have to be accountable. Right. You know, I have to follow through now. So if, you know, something just, you know, I have so many projects that I want to do, and I'll put a feeler out on social media, and then I'll find out, hey, you know, I really don't have the time. So I should not have. I won't. And so it's just about the follow through. So that's what I mean by do it. Like, if you know you cannot and you should not at this moment, don't voice it. Do not speak on it until you're ready.
So, and I know, Dr. Tyra, you say that all the time, like, don't go telling everybody that you're going to write.
Right,
So
right.
Can you shed some light on that?
Sure. I think that there are a couple of things that you want to be mindful of. I do like the idea of an accountability partner, someone that you really trust, that you can I literally posted about this morning. It's a writing tip, like have someone who can serve as a partner to check in. Yes. How's the writing going? Did you hit your goal? Those types of things. And then maybe if that person is amenable to it, they may actually be willing to read and give you some feedback on your writing. So I think in some cases, the accountability piece is very critical. And for those reasons, you may want to share it with only one or two people. I'm not a big fan of telling everybody you're in the process of writing a book. I have seen that backfire on people where you announce in March, oh, I'm writing a book. And here's something I want to be really clear about. And I've said this every time I've had a chance to speak publicly about writing a book. Do not get caught up in the notion that you can write a book in 30 days or 45 days. That is a hustle. That is a social media hustle. And what a lot of people are doing is they're leveraging this notion that people are in a rush to finish their books. Well, that's not a best practice. As someone who has taught writing for almost 20 years, that is not a best practice. And so you have to ask yourself, what's the rush, right? So literally, when you say to someone, oh, I'm writing a book, people's antennas go up. And then the very next question is, when's that book coming out? You finish that book. And so allow yourself the space to breathe and to write on your own terms, because that's going to look very different from person to person. So when you announce it, then you also then have to encounter expectations. And you don't want to put that extra pressure on yourself that people are like, well, you said you were writing a book. You said that book was coming out. So what I tell people is wait until you're closer to the finish line. Right? Wait until maybe you literally have a rough draft, or you're 3/4 of the way through, where you literally know that it's just a matter of time before you're going to finish the book. Then, to your discretion, you can announce it. But I'm not a fan of, telling people. Or if you are, just say, it's in progress, which can mean a lot of different things. But definitely, I would say try to stay away from very concrete. It's coming out on December the 30th.
Right. I ain't giving you no date. It's going to come out when it come out. When I'm done.
And no one really wants to deal with that pressure. Like, okay, well, I told everybody. And then what you end up doing is you rush, right? You rush through. And that's why, again, I'm not a fan or proponent of these programs where you write in this many days, or here's a template for a book. Right? Readers are more sophisticated than that. And I look at it like this. If someone's going to invest the time in reading your book, give them something worthy of reading.
Right.
Take the time to craft that story. It's fine. It may take someone 3 months. It may take someone else 6 months. It may take someone else a year. And that's okay.
I definitely have a great partner and my best friend, Tamise. I mean, we can just have general conversation and she'll go, what about your book?
Right.
Put that in your book. So it's just great to have that, and I don't speak on it to everyone. I do have cheerleaders and friends who are like, I know you want to write a book, or you want to do this, and that. But I do have that one who's just, a month has gone by and we haven't spoken on your book, like what's going on. So that feels good to know, like someone who knows my story, already been through the episodes with me, still wants to know what's going to happen or what's going to be in those pages. So that it